Welcome to Unlocking Passion, Men Report. Let's begin with a new story. Raymond Collins stood in the arrivals area of Krabi International Airport, clutching his phone and staring at the unanswered messages he had sent to Sasitorn over the past 3 hours. He was 63 years old, freshly arrived in Thailand after a 14-hour flight from Vancouver, carrying 2 suitcases, and the expectations that the woman he had been in a relationship with for 10 months would be there to pick him up. Instead, every call went to voicemail. Every message showed as delivered but unread, and the growing knot in Raymond's stomach told him that something was very, very wrong. 10 months earlier, Raymond had 260,000 euros in his retirement accounts. It was money it received from the sale of his auto parts distribution company and his house in Vancouver, money he had carefully saved over more than 40 years of work. He had a girlfriend named Sasitorn, although everyone called her Knock, a 31-year-old tour guide from Krabi who sent him good morning messages every day, called him her husband, and made him believe that retirement would not be spent alone, but with a woman who truly loved him. Now he had nothing. The money was gone, sent in installments over 10 months for her mother's medical bills, for renovations to her family home, and for start-up capital for a small tour company they were supposedly building together. 260,000 euros had been transferred through Western Union, bank transfers, and mobile payment apps to accounts that Knock said belonged to her family, her business partners, and her contractors. And Knock herself had vanished too. Her phone was disconnected. Her Facebook account had disappeared. Her line messages were no longer being delivered. The address she had given him, the address of her family's house where she said she would meet him, belonged to a completely different family that had never heard of anyone named Sasitorn or Knock. Raymond stood inside that airport terminal, jet-lagged and disoriented, and slowly began to understand what had happened. The woman he had been in a relationship with for 10 months, the woman he had been called almost every day, the woman who had called his elderly parents Mama and Papa during their conversations, the woman to whom he had sent his entire retirement savings, had never been real. She was a professional scammer, probably juggling several foreign boyfriends at the same time and extracting money through carefully constructed emotional manipulation and the illusion of long-distance love. This is the story of how Raymond Collins lost everything without ever meeting the woman he believed he loved. This is the story of how online romance scams do not work through sudden requests for large sums of money, but through months of patient relationship building, daily affection, and small escalating requests that gradually drain a victim's entire life savings. And this is the story of why the most dangerous scams are not the obvious ones, but the ones that make you believe you have found real love with someone on the other side of the world. If you enjoy the stories I create, please consider pressing the subscribe button. Your support is crucial for the growth of this channel and helps me dedicate time to creating these videos, despite my commitment to a full-time job. Thank you for being here. Raymond Collins was born in Vancouver, British Columbia, as the second of 3 children in a working-class family. His father worked as a dock worker at the Port of Vancouver. His mother was a seamstress, and they lived in a modest house in East Vancouver. Raymond was a practical, hard-working child who was good with his hands and had a natural understanding of how mechanical systems work. After finishing high school in 1978, Raymond got a job with a local auto parts supplier, working in the warehouse and learning the business from the ground up. He was reliable, detail-oriented, and good with customers. By his late 20s, he had been promoted to sales manager, and by his mid-30s, he had partnered with the owner to expand the business into distribution across British Columbia. Raymond married a woman named Patricia when he was 32. She worked as an administrative assistant in a law firm, and they met through mutual friends. The marriage was stable for many years. They bought a house in Burnaby, chose not to have children, and built a comfortable couple centered around work and occasional travel. But the marriage gradually lost its spark. Patricia became increasingly focused on her career, Raymond on his business, and by the time they were both in their late 50s, they had become more like business partners than spouses. The divorce was finalized when Raymond was 60. It was amicable, but emotionally exhausting. They sold the house they had shared for years, divided the assets, and went their separate ways. Raymond moved into a small apartment in Vancouver, continued running his business, and tried to adjust to life alone. But Raymond found the loneliness crushing. He had spent 30 years married, and suddenly he was eating dinner alone every night, waking up in an empty apartment, and going to bed without anyone to talk to. His friends were all married or in long-term relationships, and Raymond felt like an outsider at social gatherings, the divorced man, the single man, the one everyone pitied. When Raymond was 62, he decided to retire. He had worked for more than 40 years, and he was tired. His business partner offered to buy Raymond's share for 110,000 euros, which, combined with his savings and the proceeds, each from selling his share of the marital home, gave Raymond about 260,000 euros, enough to retire comfortably if he was careful. But Raymond did not want to spend his retirement alone in Vancouver. The cost of living was high, the weather was gloomy, and he had no real connections keeping him there. He began researching places where he could retire abroad. Places where his savings would go further, where the weather was warm, and where he might find companionship without the complications and expectations of dating in Canada. Thailand kept appearing in his searches. The cost of living was low, the weather was tropical, and there seemed to be a large community of Western retirees who had found happiness there. Raymond joined Facebook groups for expats in Thailand, watched YouTube videos about retirement in Southeast Asia, and began imagining what his life might look like in a place like Chiang Mai or Krabi. But before Raymond had even decided whether he would move to Thailand, he met Knock. In September, Raymond joined a Facebook group called Expats in southern Thailand. He had been thinking about retiring to Krabi or Phuket, and he wanted to learn more about what life in those areas was like. He posted a few travel photos from an earlier vacation in Costa Rica and wrote a short introduction. Hello everyone, I am Ray from Vancouver. I am thinking about retiring to southern Thailand sometime next year or so. Any advice or recommendations would be welcome. Within a few hours, he had received several friendly comments welcoming him to the group. One comment stood out. It was from a woman named Sasitorn, whose profile photo showed a pretty Thai woman with a warm smile. She wrote, "Welcome, Ray. I am from Krabi and work as a tour guide. If you need help or want to know about life here, I am happy to help. Beautiful area, good people. I think you will love it here." Raymond clicked on her profile. Her page showed photos of her leading tours through beautiful limestone cliffs, posing with tourists on beaches, and spending time with what appeared to be her family. She seemed real, professional, and normal. Raymond sent her a private message, thanking her for the welcome and asking about the cost of living in Krabi. Nock replied within an hour, and they began what would become daily conversations. She was friendly, warm, and genuinely helpful. She answered all his questions about rent prices, food costs, visa requirements, and the expat community in Krabi. She never asked for anything, never seemed pushy or flirtatious. She was simply helpful and kind. But after about 2 weeks of daily messages, their conversations began to shift. Nock began asking more personal questions about Raymond's life, his family, his marriage, and his feelings about retirement. Raymond found himself opening up in ways he had not expected. He told her about his divorce, about his loneliness, about his fear that he had wasted his best years building a business and a marriage that had both ended and left him with money but no purpose. Nock listened. She responded with empathy and understanding. She told Raymond about her own struggles, about working as a tour guide in a tourism industry devastated by COVID, about supporting her elderly mother, and about being single at 31 in a culture that expected women her age to be married with children. She said she understood loneliness, that she felt it too. "Ray, I think you have a very good heart," she wrote one evening. "Many men your age only think about themselves, but you think about other people. You have a kind soul. I respect that very much." Raymond felt seen in a way he had not felt in years. They began having video calls, at first just short check-ins, but gradually longer conversations where they would spend an hour or more talking about their lives, their dreams, and their hopes for the future. Nock was beautiful on video, but more importantly, she was engaging and real. She laughed at Raymond's jokes, asked about his parents, and seemed truly interested in who he was. After 2 weeks of video calls, Nock said something that made Raymond's heart race. "Ray, I know this may sound crazy, but I feel very close to you. I think maybe you are my destiny. I know we have not met in person yet, but I feel in my heart that you are a good man, and I want to be with you. Is that too fast? Am I being silly?" Raymond felt tears rise in his eyes. No one had spoken to him like that in years, with vulnerability, affection, and hope. He told Nock that she was not being silly, that he felt the same way, and that he believed they had found something special. From that point on, Nock began calling Raymond her husband. She sent him good morning messages every day. "Good morning, my husband. I miss you. I hope you have a beautiful day." She ended their video calls by blowing kisses at the camera and saying, "I love you, my husband. I am waiting for you to come here so we can be together." Raymond believed every word. He believed he had found love again, that his retirement would not be spent alone, and that Nock was his second chance at happiness. If you are watching this and thinking Raymond should have known better, understand that Nock did not ask for money right away. She spent months building trust, sending daily affection, and creating the illusion of real love. That is what makes online romance scams so devastating and effective. Subscribe to this channel and share this video to protect others from the kind of patient, systematic manipulation that cost Raymond everything. His story is about to spiral into complete financial destruction, and you need to see how easily trust can be weaponized from thousands of kilometers away. For the first 3 months of their relationship, from October to December 2022, Nok never asked Raymond for money. She remained warm, loving, and supportive. They had video calls almost every day, and Raymond felt as though he was in a real relationship, even though they had never met in person. He had already decided that he would move to Thailand in the spring of 2023, and he told Nok he could hardly wait to finally be with her. But in early January 2023, Nok sent Raymond a message that would mark the beginning of the end. She said her mother had become ill and needed to see a doctor, but the family did not have enough money for the medical bills. Nok said she was embarrassed to ask, that she hated the idea of Raymond thinking she was only with him for money, but that she did not know what else to do. "Ray, I am so sorry to ask this," Nok wrote. "My mother is very sick. The doctor says she needs special medicine. It costs 20,000 baht. I have some money, but not enough. I hate asking you for help, but I do not know who else to ask. If you cannot help, I understand. I do not want you to think I am a bad person." 20,000 baht was about 660 euros. Raymond did not hesitate. He told Nok that of course he would help, that she did not need to feel ashamed, and that taking care of family was important. He sent the money the same day through Western Union. Nok was overwhelmingly grateful. She sent him photos of her mother in a clinic, receipts from the pharmacy, and tearful video messages thanking him for being such a wonderful man. "You are my angel, Ray. You saved my mother. I will never forget this. I love you so much." Over the next few months, there were more requests. Nok's mother needed follow-up treatment. The roof of her family home was leaking and needed repairs. Nok's motorcycle broke down, and she could not get to work without it. Each time, the amounts were relatively small. 900 euros here, 1,300 there. And each time, Nok provided photos, receipts, and tearful gratitude. By April, Raymond had sent Nok about 14,000 euros. It was more than he had intended to send, but he told himself that he was helping someone he loved, that it was an investment in their future together, and that the expenses would stop once he moved to Thailand. But then Nok introduced a bigger idea. She said the tourism industry in Krabi was beginning to recover from COVID, and that she wanted to start her own small tour company instead of working for someone else. She said that if she could buy a van and obtain the proper licenses, she could build a successful business that would support both of them. She said she had some savings, but not enough to make it happen. "Ray, I have a dream," Nok said during a video call. "I want to be my own boss. I want to have a tour company. I can take people to beautiful places in Krabi, Railay Beach, Phi Phi Island. I will work very hard, and when you come here, you can help me with the business. We'll work together, build something together. This is my dream for us." Raymond loved the idea. He had run a business for decades, and he knew how to make a company successful. The idea of building something with Knock, of working together, instead of just drifting aimlessly through retirement, was appealing. He asked how much money she would need. Knock said she needed about 150,000 baht for a used van, another 100,000 for licensing and permits, and another 50,000 for initial operating costs. The total was 300,000 baht, about 10,000 euros. Raymond told her he would help. He transferred the money in 2 installments in May 2023. Knock sent him photos of a van, documents that appeared to be business licenses, and excited video messages about how her dream was coming true. Over the summer of 2023, the financial requests escalated. Knock said the van needed unexpected repairs. The tour company needed insurance. There were fees for advertising and marketing. Each time, Knock would explain the expense, show Raymond documents or receipts, and present it as an investment in their shared future. Raymond sent 5,000 euros in June, 8,000 euros in July, and 12,000 euros in August. Each time, he told himself it was temporary, that the expenses would stop once he joined her in Thailand in October. But each time, Knock had another urgent need, another crisis, another opportunity that required financial support. By September 2023, Raymond had sent Knock a total of 70,000 euros. He began to feel uncomfortable with the amount of money he was sending. But Knock was always grateful, always loving, always assuring him that everything would be perfect once he arrived in Thailand. Then Knock told Raymond that her family's house needed major renovations. She said the house was old and unsafe, that her mother was living in dangerous conditions, and that they needed to repair the foundation and replace part of the roof. She sent Raymond photos of a deteriorating wooden house with visible structural damage. She said the repairs would cost about 400,000 baht, around 13,000 euros. Raymond hesitated. He had already sent so much money, but Knock was emotional, tearful. She said she was ashamed to ask, but did not know what else to do. She said her mother was older and deserved to live in a safe home, and that Raymond's help would be a blessing for the entire family. Raymond sent the money. Knock sent him photos of construction workers at the house, delivered materials, and progress reports. Everything seemed legitimate, but the construction went over budget. There were unexpected costs. Materials were more expensive than expected. The workers had to be paid in advance. Over the next 2 months, Raymond sent another 36,000 euros for the renovations. By November 2023, Raymond had sent Knock a total of 120,000 euros. He was supposed to move to Thailand in October, but Knock had asked him to wait. She said the renovations were not finished, that the tour company was not fully operational yet, and that it would be better if he waited until January, when everything would be ready. Raymond agreed to wait. He trusted Knock. She sent him daily messages, called him her husband, and showed him photos and videos of her life. Everything seemed real. In December, Knock told Raymond that there was a business opportunity they could not miss. She said a tour operator in Krabi was selling his customer list and tour routes, and if they could buy them, Knock's tour company would become profitable immediately. She said it would cost 300,000 baht, about 10,000 euros, but it would transform the business overnight. Raymond sent the money, but then there were more expenses. The tour routes required new permits. The customer list had to be legally transferred. There were fees and taxes. Raymond sent another 14,000 euros. By the end of December, Raymond had sent Nock a total of 140,000 euros. He began to feel anxious about the amount of money he was spending before he had even arrived in Thailand. But Nock assured him that everything would make sense once he arrived, that he would see how well she had used the money, and that they would be successful together. In January 2024, Nock said that her mother needed emergency surgery. She sent Raymond photos of her mother in a hospital bed, medical documents, and tearful video messages begging for help. The surgery would cost 200,000 baht, about 7,000 euros. Raymond sent the money immediately, but then the recovery required expensive medication. Then there were follow-up treatments, and then the hospital demanded additional payments. Over 2 weeks, Raymond sent another 16,000 euros. By the end of January, Raymond had sent Nock a total of 163,000 euros. He was running out of money. His retirement savings were almost gone. But Nock told him this was the last expense, that her mother was recovering, that everything was finally stable, and that he should book his flight to Thailand so they could finally be together. Raymond booked a flight for early February. He was nervous, but excited. After more than a year of a long-distance relationship, he would finally meet Nock in person, see the tour company they had built together, meet her family, and begin the retirement life he had dreamed of. But at the end of January, just days before his flight, Nock sent one final request. She said the tour company had to pay outstanding debts before Raymond arrived, that there were suppliers who needed to be paid or the business would be shut down. She said she needed 110,000 baht, about 4,000 euros, to settle the debts and make sure the business was operating properly when Raymond arrived. Raymond scraped the money together and sent it. When he boarded his flight to Thailand in early February, he had sent Nock a total of 260,000 euros, his entire retirement savings. Raymond landed at Krabi International Airport on a humid February afternoon, exhausted from the long journey, but excited to finally meet Nock. He had given her his flight details, and she had promised to pick him up at the airport. But when Raymond walked through the arrivals area and searched the crowd for Nock's face, she was nowhere to be seen. He pulled out his phone and tried to call her. The call went straight to voicemail. He tried again. Same result. He sent messages through Line, Facebook, and WhatsApp. None of them were delivered. Raymond felt a flash of panic. Maybe her phone battery had died. Maybe she was stuck in traffic. He found a bench and sat down, waiting and refreshing his messages every few minutes. 1 hour passed, then 2 hours, and still nothing. Raymond tried calling Nock's number again. This time, the number was completely disconnected. He checked her Facebook page. It was gone. Her Line account showed that it no longer existed. Raymond felt his hands begin to shake. This could not be happening. There had to be an explanation. Maybe Knock had lost her phone. Maybe there had been an emergency. He took out the address she had given him for her family's house and showed it to a taxi driver, asking to be taken there. The drive took about 30 minutes and passed through increasingly rural roads until they arrived in a small village. The taxi stopped in front of a modest wooden house. Raymond got out and knocked on the door. A middle-aged Thai woman answered and looked confused. Raymond tried to communicate, showing photos of Knock on his phone and asking whether this was her family's house. The woman shook her head and called her husband. Through broken English and hand gestures, they made it clear. No one named Sasitorn or Knock lived there. This was their house. They had lived there for 20 years. The photos Knock had sent Raymond, the photos of the house that needed renovations, the construction progress, and the family gatherings. None of it had happened there. Raymond felt the world tilt. He got back into the taxi and asked to be taken to the office of the tour company, the address Knock had given him for her business. They drove back toward central Krabi and stopped in front of a small commercial building. Raymond went to the office number Knock had provided. It was empty. No furniture, no equipment, no sign that any business had ever operated there. Raymond sat down on the curb in front of the building, his head in his hands, unable to process what was happening. Knock was gone. The family house was fake. The tour company did not exist. 260,000 euros, his entire retirement savings, were gone. Raymond went to the Krabi police station the next morning. He brought printed copies of all his bank transfer records, screenshots of his conversations with Knock, and copies of the photos and documents she had sent him. The police listened to his story and checked their records. The investigating officer told Raymond through a translator that the name Sasitorn was probably fake. The phone numbers Raymond had called were registered under different names. The bank accounts to which Raymond had sent money had been opened with fake identification documents and closed shortly after each transfer was completed. The photos of Knock's family home had been stolen from someone else's Facebook page. Reverse image searches showed that they had been posted years earlier by a completely different family. This is a very common scam, the officer said. A woman targets a foreign man online, builds a relationship over many months, slowly asks for money, and by the time the victim realizes what has happened, the scammer is gone and the money is gone. Very difficult to recover. The officer said they would open an investigation, but he was not optimistic. The scammer had been careful. Fake identities, closed accounts, no physical trail. Even if they could identify who was behind the scam, prosecution would be extremely difficult, given the nature of the crime and the difficulty of proving intent. Raymond left the police station completely destroyed. He had been deceived. The woman he believed he loved, the woman he had messaged every day for more than a year, the woman who had called him her husband and promised to build a life with him, had never been real. She was a professional criminal who was probably running the same scam on several men at the same time, extracting money through patient emotional manipulation and fabricated crises. Raymond had about 14,000 euros left, barely enough to survive for a few months. He could not afford a flight back to Canada. He had no home to return to anyway. He had sold his apartment before leaving Vancouver and planned to make Thailand his permanent residence. Raymond moved to Chiang Mai, where the cost of living was lower than in Krabi. He found a tiny room in a guest house for 5,000 baht per month, about 160 euros. The room had a single bed, a small table, and a shared bathroom at the end of the hallway. It was all he could afford. He needed income. He began teaching English part-time at a small language school that hired foreigners without proper work permits. The pay was minimal, 300 baht per hour, about 10 euros. But it was enough to cover rent and basic food expenses. Raymond, who had once owned a successful business and a home in Vancouver, was now living in a room smaller than his old walk-in closet, teaching basic English grammar to Thai children for pocket money. In the months after the scam, Raymond learned more about how online romance scams work. He joined support groups for scam victims, spoke with other men who had similar experiences, and read extensively about the tactics these criminals use. Nok had been a professional. She had spent months building trust before asking for money. She had created an entire fictional life: family, business, medical crises. Everything was designed to make Raymond feel as though he was helping someone he loved instead of being robbed. The photos she sent were either stolen from other people's social media accounts or staged specifically for the scam. The video calls had been real, but Nok was probably not her real name, and she was probably running the same scam on several men at the same time. The most devastating part was how real everything had felt. Raymond had not been fooled by obvious lies or crude manipulation. He had been fooled by months of daily affection, consistent communication, and carefully constructed emotional intimacy. Nok had called his parents, remembered his birthday, and asked about his health. She had made him believe he mattered to someone, but it was all theater. Every "I love you," every "I miss you," every "you are my husband" was part of a script designed to extract the maximum amount of money before disappearing. Raymond is now 63 years old, living in a tiny room in Chiang Mai, teaching English part-time to survive. He has no retirement savings, no property, and no safety net. He spends his days teaching and his evenings alone in his room, thinking about the choices he made. He thinks about the first message Nok sent him, welcoming him to the expat group. He thinks about the first video call, when she smiled at him and made him feel seen. He thinks about every "good morning, my husband" message, every photo she sent, every tear she cried when she asked for help. He thinks about how deeply he believed in all of it, how completely convinced he was that he had found real love. Raymond now tries to warn other men about online romance scams. He posts in expat forums, shares his story in Facebook groups, and speaks to anyone who will listen. But he knows most people will dismiss his warning. They will think they are smarter, more careful, and that their online girlfriend is real. Raymond thought the same thing. He had run a successful business for decades. He was intelligent, experienced, and practical. And yet he was completely deceived by someone who understood that the key to a successful long-term scam is not to rush, but to build what feels like a real emotional connection over months before ever asking for money. Raymond Collins is 63 years old, and he lost his entire retirement savings to a woman he never met. He sent the money over 10 months, believing he was helping his girlfriend's mother, building a tour company, and renovating a family home. None of it was real. The girlfriend was a scammer. The mother was probably an actress or a stock photo. The tour company never existed, and the house renovations happened at someone else's house. Raymond moved to Thailand, expecting to spend his retirement with a woman who loved him. Instead, he lives in a tiny room, teaches English part-time, and survives on the edge of expat society. He has no savings, no home, and no prospects. He has only the crushing knowledge that he spent a year of his life falling in love with an illusion. And he paid his entire retirement for that illusion. Raymond thought he was investing in love. He was only paying for a performance. And now, as he sits in his small room in Chiang Mai, he understands that the cruelest scams are not the ones that steal your money quickly. They are the ones that steal your hope slowly, day by day, message by message, until you have given everything and have nothing left. Raymond's story is a devastating reminder that romance scams are not obvious or rushed. They are patient, systematic, and emotionally sophisticated. The scammer spends months building trust, creating intimacy, and making you believe you have found real love before systematically draining your savings. If this documentary opened your eyes to how these scams work, please subscribe and share this video widely. Stay alert. Never send money to someone you have never met in person. And remember, real love does not require you to transfer your life savings to prove your devotion. Thank you for watching, and please stay safe.